Once a year we have this Science Week where we bring 200 people together and that is a big marketplace for exchanging. Nairobi Landscape Day, we invite a wider audience from outside as well, and we want to show how all these different things that we do fit together. And in that sense the word landscape is a very useful platform to say all the things that we do, they still influence jointly the livelihoods, they jointly influence the water, the climate as it exists out there, and there are all these relations between the different parts in the landscape that in the past were split, and one part is called forest and it's managed by the forest department, and one is part agriculture and one is part public works and this and that. And it is really, we need to bring these things together again and jointly understand what is happening, what are the challenges, and what is it that people can do to make the landscape more suitable to their own needs, and at the same time achieve what the countries want as a whole. So this year we took as a theme this future Earth, or the futures people want, the aspirations of Sustainable Development Goals. At the same time, that has to be a bottom-up process. It has to start in the landscapes at the scale where people live, and we need to see. We are convinced that agroforestry has a lot to offer, that it is still not recognized in many places, that some trees are handled by the forest department and other trees are neglected, and yet the trees on farm are oftentimes at least as important as the trees in the forest for the functions that we provide. And we want to bring that a common language and a common way of understanding what happens, and a common way for people in that landscape to take charge and get control over what happens. So a lot of planning has always been very much top-down, and we want to stimulate more bottom-up processes for planning what is going on. And landscape, to some extent, there is nothing new about it. People have been living in landscapes all the time, but when you wake up in the morning in your house, in your hut, you might see there are a few trees around the house, and then you walk further away and you come to more open fields, but with trees in there. And then when you walk further, you might come to the forest or the hills. So what you can see when you walk in one day is what we call a landscape. All of that is important for the way you live. All of that is important for the climate. The trees around your house, they make it cool and nice. The trees in the forest help to cool down the place overall. And the water that falls in the forest flows into the fields and that part. So the landscape is really a word that describes how all these things work together, hang together. And in a way, there's nothing revolutionary new about it. So the reality is actually more integrated already than we recognize. So first of all, let's open our eyes to what actually happens, and let's forget about the simplifications or the schematic forms that we have. I mean, foresters live in one world and agriculture in another world, and get out of that, come out. And so the simple thing is start from bottom up and connect with that. And then indeed, if we focus on function rather than form, very much open up, integrate. Specific things around water have always been, water is a clear something you only understand at a landscape scale. You cannot do it piecemeal. So that's a good starting point to get in. How do we manage the water? From water we go to the climate. And the climate, at the moment people mostly talk about the carbon and the global climate. So we have this very ambivalent relation with land use planning. On one hand it is important, on the other hand it has normally not been done very effectively, and we need to reinvent that. At the same time we need to make sure that at the local level the incentives for people are aligned with what we want to get out of our overall landscapes for livelihood functions. So it is then very much a governance issue. How do we say governance is about the carrots, the sticks and the sermons. It is about the positive incentives, the carrots. It is about the rules and the institutions and the enforcement of that, the sticks. And it is about the sermons. It is about ultimately what is it that people want. And if we can agree on what people want, then the rest is easy. But just with money or just with rules you cannot create the common goal that we need. So it is still very much about how can we have, through a more bottom-up approach, make sure that we have a common vision, what people want out of their landscapes, what future we want, and how landscapes can be, can reduce the barriers that we currently have and understand and focus on function rather than form. So planning is very important, but don't expect that your plans will be implemented. It is the process of planning, the process of thinking through what is important to us and what are the ways to get there. But then don't expect your plan will be implemented the way you plan it. If I can start with an example where we worked on Indonesia. There's an area there, it is quite steep mountains, but people had settled there 20-30 years ago, opened up coffee gardens. They were at some point stimulated by agricultural department to make sure it did cause problems with erosion. Then a change was, the whole area was declared to be forest. A new hydroelectric system was developed there, and all the farmers were evicted from that land because coffee is not compatible with water flows in the way people thought about it. And there were big struggles. People were killed in the struggle around that. It was really very fierce. We came in and tried to say, well, there is a middle way with agroforestry shaded trees that actually are no problem for water and no problem for watershed functions, and you can have all the hydropower that you want coming out of that landscape. But we needed the forestry department to see through the evidence what happens. We needed to reduce the conflict and get people to sit on the floor, not around the table, but sit on the floor together and find out what were perceptions, what is reality. And we helped to create new negotiated agreements about how that landscape can be managed.